Please be seated. Tonight's sermon is actually going to be not what we just read. It's going to be the section that we didn't read. That big 20 verses in the middle of our gospel reading that I'm pretty sure the only reason they didn't have it in the lectionary is it's a lot to read, and they were trying to give the deacon a break. So we're going to be hearing another version of this gospel, if you will. So I did want to preface that. I have two words for you: Lectio Divina, the ancient practice of prayerfully reading the scripture in order to hear what God is telling you, really telling you in your heart. While reflecting on this week's reading, the idea of truly hearing and connecting, whether in sacred text or with one another, feels particularly important, especially when we consider the relentless pace of our lives. I'd like to share what I encountered in a Lectio Divina of tonight's reading. I'll also preface it by saying that I do have a habit, I believe, of noticing the women in the Bible, especially the ones that get no credit. They're the ones that time and time again stand out to me the most, and I think we need to hear them, and so it's a good thing. Our heroine tonight is a poor servant girl who didn't have a name, or at least not one that anyone remembered. She worked quietly and she didn't say much, but she saw everything. She had been serving at a party at the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Everyone had been having a great time, smiling. The food was good, the wine was flowing, everything was great. She drew back, though, when Judas had gotten angry, mad when Mary came in with a large jar of perfume and poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. She didn't understand why Mary had done that. At first she thought maybe Mary tripped and it was an accident, but no, it didn't look like she had fallen. It looked very intentional. And Judas was certainly angry, calling her wasteful. But the rabbi seemed like such a kind man saying, "Leave her alone." He defended Mary and said that she'd done right, that she'd gotten it for his funeral. Eventually, everyone calmed down, but Jesus, he seemed very happy at Mary, but maybe a little bit sad with everyone else. The mood had definitely changed a little bit. The servant girl was called again to help serve at another meal. She wondered if people were still upset about the argument they had had at the party. Tonight's meal was strange, quieter, and subdued. Suddenly, during supper, the rabbi got up, took off his robe, tied a towel around his waist, and began to wash the feet of all of the men who were present. Afterwards, he mentioned some of them weren't clean. She couldn't understand why this famous rabbi was washing their feet in the first place, and even the man they called Peter seemed really uncomfortable with it, and at first refused, although later it seemed like he wanted a bath instead. Jesus seemed like he really wanted them to understand what he was doing, repeating himself. She wasn't the only one who strained to listen to him and hear him and try to understand what Jesus was talking about. He had washed their feet and asked that they wash each other's feet. He was the great rabbi and asked them to not think of themselves as better than each other. As a servant girl, she wondered if the rabbi could also mean that they shouldn't think of themselves as better than her. The Rabbi Jesus of Nazareth talked with them for a long time about love, a lot about love. The story of that nameless servant girl might have ended, but it continues with us tonight. We have the benefit of being able to look back and maybe understand more in hindsight. We know how the story goes. We knew that story even though we didn't read it tonight. But tonight, the upper room, next the garden, and then the cross. That's the way it runs, right? And then Easter morning. But it's the same Jesus, and we're not that different from the rest of the disciples. If washing each other's feet was a challenging request during a time when foot washing was normal, it's doubly uncomfortable for us. We typically practice it just once a year, Happy Maundy, Thursday. And we're also the product of a society that puts immense value on what you do and who you are. Isn't that one of the first questions we ask each other after we ask each other's name and introduce ourselves? We ask, what do you do? We equate career, power, and busyness with worth, sometimes at the expense of genuine connection and well-being. Studies highlight the impact of stress, burnout, and anxiety in America. I think we've all heard or seen of them. The pressure to be constantly productive, both at work and in our personal lives, has created a culture of busyness that is worn as a badge of honor. However, this relentless pace can be damaging to our mental and our physical health. Research links chronic stress to increased risks of depression, anxiety, heart disease, and lower immunity. The feeling of constantly being overwhelmed without enough time to do anything can eat away at our ability to enjoy life and connect meaningfully with each other. This can create an unhealthy cycle of too much work and not enough downtime, leading to emotional exhaustion and a lack of self-worth. This epidemic of anxiety and the normalization of burnout stand in stark contrast to Jesus' call to love each other. So tonight, you're invited to step away from your busyness. While foot washing is really quite simple, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe it's because the things that Jesus asks us to do aren't necessarily easy. They challenge our usual habits and call us to stop, practice humility, serve others, and be the disciples who truly love each other. Thank you.